Hi everyone, I'm going to show you a game between Praggnanandhaa and Anish Giri from the Superbet Grand Chess Tour. The reason why I chose this game is because of its size. It's only 21 moves and it's also a very, how do you say, a very modern game that highlights why these young talents are so dangerous. So here's the background. Praggnanandhaa has just lost his game against Gukesh in the previous round. This is rapid game, 25 minutes plus 10 seconds increment. And in the second round of the day, which is the fifth round overall of the tournament, he is facing Anish. Anish also lost his previous round. He's not in good form in this tournament, but Anish is, of course, one of the biggest opening experts in the world. So, how does Praggnanandhaa outwit an opening expert? This is very interesting. Secondly, because Praggnanandhaa is fresh from his candidate's prep, these opponents are always very dangerous because they have worked so deeply on chess and have been so motivated. So, you need to be careful. Prag opens the game with d4. Anish goes knight f6. And now we have the Trompovsky with bishop g5. Anish plays the simple move d5 and now knight d2. There are other moves here, of course, which is bishop takes f6 is one. There's also e3 which can be played. These two are more popular moves. But knight d2 is also played. There are 3000 games here. Anish has played c5 before and has had success with it. I think 2 draws, 1 win. And in those games, the move that was played was e3. And Anish in one game took on d4, in another game played knight c6. Black is doing okay. So Prag took on c5. And Anish played the most natural move, which is e6. He wants to take this pawn. e4 played in the center. And here's the important tactical justification. You take on e4, I take back. You take my queen, I take with the rook. And you can't win the knight because of a checkmate on d8. So that's the reason why Anish went and chopped the pawn on c5. And now Prag played this move e5. So he's winning a piece, but generally such move can be met with this move h6. So if you take on f6, I'll take on g5. And if you go back, I go g5. But here after bishop g3, it turns out that white is slightly better here. Let's say knight d7, I go h4. White is doing very well. But here in such a position, Anish was prepared and played queen b6. Now this is where you have kind of successfully lured your opponent into a territory from where there is no coming back. And why I say these youngsters are so dangerous is because they have a lot of time, energy and motivation to work on these openings. Anish also loves chess and has worked on chess a lot, but as you grow older, you have more responsibilities, right? And so the amount of time you can dedicate and devote to looking at chess goes lower. So while Anish did remember queen b6, and even further you will be impressed by the amount of things he remembers, it is quite possible, and by the way, this is all my assumptions, it's quite possible that he did not revise this line recently. He might have prepared it some time ago. So here, e takes f6 was taken by Prag, and Anish took on f2. King came up, and now this is where Anish actually surprised me and I think many others by his next move. I was thinking he would take on g1. When the game becomes very sharp, just to illustrate this line, because this is a threat, queen f2, I don't have time for fg7 because queen f2 is very strong. So I must begin with first sacrificing another piece, an entire rook actually. Yeah, sorry, exchange, fg7, rook g8. And now this very nice move. Maybe you want to pause the video and think white to play. Yes, knight to e4. Very important. You can't take because there's a mate. And after rook takes g7, I give a check. And very important not to go king f8 here because of bishop e3. The queen is hanging, and next move bishop c5 check is coming. And the point is, of course, rook g2 is met with king f3. Queen h2, bishop g2, and white wins. Modern chess. So king d8 has to be played, and believe it or not, this position is equal according to the engines, with some crazy stuff happening like this. Yeah. So instead of taking here on g1, Anish found this move e5. I really like this move, and I think this is where Anish, being an opening expert, comes to the fore. That he is so good at openings that he, even in this sideline, he knows what the best move is. Fg, rook g8, and now Prag plays this cool move, knight d f3. This move does two things. One would imagine Prag to develop a piece here, but then the queen does not get the d2 square, and after rook g7, white pieces are bit fighting for the same squares and so on. Knight df3 is less logical because you're not developing a piece, but after rook g7, you have this very specific move, queen d2, to defend this bishop and ask the question to your opponent, what are you going to play? So in positions like this, a move like e4 is not going to help so much. I mean, the knight cannot really go somewhere, but I have this very nice move, bishop e3. And this is a recurring theme. Because after take, if you take, king takes, ef, knight f3, this is a small edge for white. And this is not something that black would want. Equal pawns, but this is an isolated pawn. These are also isolated. So the move here that again Anish found, and I think this is still his prep, is knight c6. He's saying to Prag that because your pieces are so clumsy, I'm not even in a hurry to push my pawns. And here is where Prag surprised one and all. It's not a novelty. It has been played before. What is the move white should play here? And by the way, the move has been played in correspondence chess, not in over the board. The move is a4. Insane. Two things here. You are making use of the pieces or the resources which are there, not worrying about these which are not developing right now. So for example, if you try to play knight h3, I have takes, and e4, and black is better. a4, two things. One is you are going for a5. Second, you are going for rook a3, rook b3. That's how special this move is. Now, I think Anish had many options here. But he chose e4, which is, I think, pretty logical. There were other options like, for example, take. And maybe Anish could have mixed up this line. Take, knight d4 could be on his mind. King d1. Bishop g4 check. Knight e2. Knight takes, bishop takes, bishop takes. You can't take with the queen because this bishop on g5 would hang. King e2, and now h6. You can't take here. Rook g2, you lose the queen. And this leads to an equal position. And perhaps this is what Anish, if he remembered, should have done. But he played e4. And now Prag found rook a3. Again, as we discussed, you don't really want to be taking here because after knight f3, it helps white to develop the pieces. Although such positions are also interesting. I think the most interesting way to continue was bishop g4. And if here rook b3 is the main move, if we were to do the same treatment like bishop e3, this time the problem is after takes, there is queen takes b2, which is a nice move. and this gives black a good position. So because the knight is also pinned right here, that's also the thing. So that's the reason why bishop g4, rook b3, and now this check, not check but queen in the center, knight is pinned, I take back, and this position is much better because now somehow, you know, you have the bishop out, there are some possibilities. Still, I would say that Pragg might have prepared this and felt like white is pushing here for a very small edge. Could be. But in the game, what happened was Anish went totally wrong. He took on g1, and this is where I say that maybe he was thinking about this line in his mind, which could have been his prep, but instead he did it after one move. He took, and now he gave a check. Maybe this relatively better was bishop e6, but knight d4, Pragg just went back with his king. Suddenly you realize that this is no longer a good move because of king c1 here, which is very strong. And these are these little subtle nuances, you know, in this line, because if we were, you know, discussing this position and bishop g4, here king c1 doesn't work because of rook c8, with the knight being here and solidly entrenched, and these little things, you know, now check coming in, rook c2 threatened. So in the game, after knight g1, knight d4, king d1, he took on b2, but Pragg was like unimpressed. He simply moved his rook to g3, check, queen c1, and maybe now Anish could take and play knight f5, and this is somehow playable, but I believe that this position is very difficult for black, especially because this bishop is solidly placed. This bishop will come out, knight will come and sit here. It's complete chaos on the dark square. Like, dark squares are completely in white's hands. So queen a4 was played, but now it's over. Pragg finds this precise, beautiful move, queen b2, bishop d7, and now bishop f6, hitting the rook and the knight. And after rook g3, h g3, knight f5, there is rook h7, and Anish resigned here because rook h8 is coming, the king cannot move. It might be a very rare occasion where Praggnanandhaa has both his knights and bishop undeveloped. But a fun fact is that this knight is not the knight on g1. If you remember, the route is basically this knight coming this way. So it started from b1, ended on g1, and that's how Praggnanandhaa won. I think this game is a very good representation of the status of modern opening theory. You play lines which surprise your opponent. They have not checked it recently. They would have checked it at some point, but you have so many ideas. You have a good memory. You're working on chess so much that you are able to catch your opponent off guard. And this is what players like Pragg, Gukesh, Nodirbek, Vincent, Arjun, they are all able to do. And this is what is creating a lot of pressure on the senior players, on the older generation. And this was a very good example of that. What are your thoughts on this? Do let me know in the comment section. Do you agree with this kind of analysis of mine, or do you have any other thoughts? For now, this is Sagar Shah signing off. Bye bye.